My name is Anharet, and welcome to Unsilenced, a podcast by One to All Initiative. Here, we embark on a journey to break the silence surrounding gender-based violence. In our episodes, we'll share stories, insights, and actions to address this critical issue. Everyone joining us on these episodes, you are very welcome to the family. You can listen to us on Spotify for podcasters, Unsilenced, a podcast by One to All Initiative. You can also find us on YouTube. Our channel is One to All Initiative. Our email as well is onetoallfoundation@gmail.com. We are also very active on social media. On X, find us on One to All 254. On Instagram and Facebook, find us at One to All _initiative. We also have a blog on WordPress, Gender-Based Violence 4, where we post our articles on a weekly basis. Feel free to engage with us and share your stories, and together, let us create a gender-based violence-free society. Let's dive in. With me, I have 3 panelists, and I'd like them to introduce themselves before we begin this session. I'll start with Miss Emma.
Hello, everyone. I am a promoter of a free society from violence, especially violence against women and girls. This podcast, I'm Nyabisi Onsongo. I'll be talking about gender-based violence against women and girls. I am a founder of One to All initiative, and I'm a co-director. And I hope that we'll be able to learn and make our society to be a society that guarantees freedom from violence against women and girls. Thank you.
Up next, I'll have Miss Kendi.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Kendi Muthomi. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm a co-founder. We work with Emma, currently the director here in Kenya, and I'm so excited for this podcast because we will be getting to have the difficult conversations, the happy conversations, and everything that we need to say that needs to be said that has not been said, so that we can move forward and see how we can be part of the change or be part of the voices that speak for those who have not been spoken for. So thank you very much, Harriet. It's a pleasure to be here.
Mr. Evans.
Hi everyone. I'm Evans Wamiru. I'm a lawyer, I'm a techpreneur, and I'm a human rights defender. I also coordinate a human rights group that focuses on gender-based violence, land and housing rights for people living in informal settlements, and climate justice. So I'm happy to be here as my first podcast session for throughout my lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Because this is our very, very first episode, we would like to officially introduce One to All initiative to you all. Would need to tell you what we do, what you are all about, and what we stand for. So I'd like to invite Miss Emma to officially introduce One to All initiative to us.
Again, I'll say thank you so much for this opportunity to be in this podcast, to be part of it, and to be able to share more about ourselves to you all. Yes, One to All was an initiative that was founded under the vision of developing a society that is free from violence, a society that empowers women and girls as well as men to be free from violence. Yes, many are times that we, the outsiders, we find ourselves judging those inside violence environments. We feel that they have the power to get out of a violent environment, but we forget that there's a lot that goes around that they are not able to get out of this environment. And as such, One to All initiative, which is also known as OTA. OTA is a Kiswahili word. In English, it means to dream. Our dream is to have a society that is free from violence, that guarantees the right of freedom from violence for women and girls through empowering women and girls, but at the same time, empowering also men to give them the tools that they can use to help women free themselves from violence. Yes. Therefore, this is an organization that promotes a free society that is from any violence that affect women and girls. At the same time, also protecting our men and boys. Therefore, I'll also offer this chance for Miss Kendi to give more insight on our organization, especially on the projects, the programs, and what we do to better our societies. Thank you.
Yes, you have elaborated quite well, and let me pick from where you have left. It is important that we dream also of a society where everyone is on the same page, because many times we've had to really negotiate when what we are asking for is basically a human right for everyone, a right to education, a right to good health, a right uh, to an environment that is safe for you. So bringing everybody on board, that is men and boys, women and girls, together towards an agenda for ending violence is very important to us, and it's one of our main objectives. Our programs, they include, first we have ELSC. ELSC is a project that is on economic empowerment, leadership, and also advocacy. That is for everyone to have an opportunity to have maybe an income generating activity, um, to have a way of not being vulnerable to violence because of economic constraints. And then we also have one called mentorship. Mentorship, that is capital in caps men, then torship. It's for men and boys. That is their safe space, and also it's a project that really tries to see the perspective of the boys and of the men, and understand how each of us are facing GBV and how each of us can avoid being perpetrators of violence to each other. Then we have Her Liberty program, which is a program for ladies, as you can hear, Her Liberty. And Her Liberty means her freedom, uh, for her to be empowered, for her to have the ability to move past uh, the constraints in her life. And in that, we get to do the creation of awareness, we get to have trainings, we get to have capacity building, and all of our projects really just complement each other. Then we have the last, that is our favorite, and Emma is really has been really of good assistance to us as a lawyer. It's called the Legal Aid and Rights project, where we get to create awareness and get to assist people with ways of understanding the law and how it can come through for them in spaces where they feel that they are undergoing forms of violence or any form of harassment and so on. So those are our projects, and at One to All, we do really, our main taglines are: we are vocal, we are transformative, and we are inclusive. So that's it. I think that's what we do. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Emma and Kendi. That being said, I'd like to jump into the main story or the main topic of discussion today. I'd like to bring our attention to the recent case that we've seen in the media, the case of Starlet Wahu, who was brutally murdered in an apartment, or what is commonly known as an Airbnb in South B, Kenya, by an accused man by the name of John Matara. So the basic story is that these two had an agreement to spend the night together, but unfortunately that night ended up being a very, very fateful night, in that it ended in the death of Scarlett Wahu. According to the news outlets, they say that John Matara was part of a gang of about 11 members who would lure women, maybe from social media bases or dating sites, and they would call them and plan a night of enjoyment with them, but eventually they would end up robbing them. And unfortunately, in as much as most of these cases actually happened to women in Kenya, these types of activities actually also happen to men, and especially people who identify as gay men. They're also lured, and they also end up dead just in the same way.
but the story of today being femicide. Recently, also, we had the story of a first year female student from Machakos University who was actually murdered by her fifth year boyfriend over just, a very heated argument over a very small thing. So unfortunately, in Kenya, there's a lot of cases of femicide that have been seen to be going on, and in as much as there are laws that have been put down by the government, by the judiciary, the enforcement is still very, very hard. So I'd like to get insights from the panel, and I think I'll start with Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Harriet. I think it's not one of those conversations you'd say it's interesting or fun to talk about, especially when there's some level of inhumane actions being meted against women. And it's pretty cruel out here. So based on what the narration you've given and what is all out on the news also, I would say it's very difficult to assert or to just know what transpired between those two, because all we know is one human being came out alive and the other, did not make it. But again, so I don't know whether I've experienced this because one of my classmates, I'm saying one of my classmates in high school actually is right now in the hands of the criminal justice system for being a prime suspect to a love or a happy ending gone sour ordeal. So if you remember the case of Ezra Chiloba, there's this guy, Jackton, who had an affair with the guy, and then Ezra Chiloba ended up dead, and then they tried to cover up the murder. So that kind of thing. It's just crazy to see how reckless young people are when it comes to ending people's lives or when it comes to having sexual affairs, and then they resort to killing each other. And the statistics are it's often young women it's often young women who are involved in these things or young people. So it speaks a lot to the levels of sobriety, especially given that this was a case of Niswa who I think from a club or something. And then also the police report say that there was some level of alcohol found in the scene, some bang and all. So, I mean, it's also the level of awareness we have as young people, because if you're gonna engage in a sexual activity as a person, I think for your own safety, it's important that you be sober so that you're also able to comprehend the situation around you. And if you feel that things is not safe, like just drop a text to someone, tell them, hey, I'm here and I think this and this is happening. So please come. Or if I send 911, please respond. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Evans. I'll move on to Emma.
Yes. I think femicide has been a big issue, especially in Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria, and most other parts of the region, especially in Africa. And not only in Africa, there are other parts of the world that you find the femicide and gender-based being a big issue. So first, I would like to define what does gender-based violence entail. Gender-based violence refers to those acts that are directed to a target gender or those harmful acts that may disproportionately affect a certain gender compared to the other. While GBV majorly affects women, men are also victims of gender-based violence and members of the LGBTQI. Therefore, under this, you find that gender-based violence may involve acts such as domestic violence, which most of the people experience. And this is one of the areas that pushed myself to start one-to-all initiative. I have seen many people experience domestic violence, especially from my community. I come from a community in Kenya known as Kisii or Abagusi. For us, we find that beating of women is a bit of a common norm, which is tolerated and encouraged by the society members. Yeah, I grew up in a household whereby I saw my mother experiencing domestic violence. She was beaten by my stepdad, and mostly there was nothing that was done to him. And that time I was a small child, and there's nothing really you could do. And you found that everyone was complacent to the acts, and we lived with it, and we felt like it's part of it. But I came to realize as I grew up, no, this is not common. Other communities do not experience the same thing, you know. And even when my mother could be beaten until like you feel like she's about to die, no one could come to help. The community members will just look at it until it ends, and then they call family members to come talk about it, and until the next time when again the same experience continue. And it's not only her, other people. I could see many women going through the same thing, and even men sometimes, because the men and women could fight in the community, they could beat each other, and no one could just even come to help end the fights, you know. And I felt like this was one of what contributed to my mother's death. Because after she separated with my stepdad, a few months later she succumbed and died like that, and no one has ever really identified what was the cause of her death. So, and many women in Kenya have died because of domestic violence, and more of other acts that can be categorized as gender-based violence. Therefore, I felt like though there are many other organizations out there that advocate for end of gender-based violence, there's still a gap that needs to be felt. And therefore, Kendi and we came together and said, what can we do to help out? What is our role in ending gender-based violence? And that's when we came up with this organization. Femicide, as mostly it is our major issue that we can say that is experienced in Kenya. We can remember the case of Ivy Wangeshi, who was killed by her boyfriend, who I believe was an ex-boyfriend, who traveled miles from Thika to Eldoret to go only to hack her to death, which wasn't a good thing. And many more women who have been thrown from buildings and succumbed to death. And most of us, we don't even question the intentions of the culprit, and mostly our questions are to the victims. What was she wearing? What was she doing in a man's house? Why did she start dating this person? We have those questions, and we don't ever wonder, why did this person do this to this woman? What can we do to solve this? Even our police, our justice system is also laying back and doing nothing, which really affects it motivates more men or more culprits to continue doing what they're doing. And this is the same case with John Matara. When we listen to the interviews of the women that experienced violence under this person, these women went to report to the police, and police did nothing. And this is the same thing which happened, especially when it comes to domestic violence. We find that women, the victims go to report, to the police. And the police, most police are like, that is an issue of lovers. If you be reporting now and then all marriages will end. But we don't try and see how can we help this victim come out of violence and give them protection, Therefore, I believe that as a society, we have failed the victims. And it is time that we walk and we start working in a society that advocates for the rights of all people from violence, especially women and girls who experience violence, including FGM, whereby you are circumcised and some of individual succumb to death or they're affected negatively because of that. Child marriages and many more. Yes, I'll also pass the same to Kendi to give more insight. Thank you.
Uh, I can say that on this John Matara story, what came out for me was alcohol abuse, of course, drug abuse. If it is indeed true that that was the case, he was a guy who was under substance abuse. And then what else came for me is mental health. What drives someone to constantly do what they do in terms of harming others? Is it a form of gratification? Is it a form of survival for economic constraints in their life? And also it came along for intimate partner violence, because previously it is said that he had other women coming and going. That's allegedly what the was it the caretaker or the watchman said. And if the others got to walk away without being killed, although some said they walked away and they were sexually violated, what is it that made him feel like to get done with this lady if he caused the problem? So if he indeed killed the lady. So for me, I would like to speak on mental health. Nowadays, so many young people are struggling with issues. We no longer have the resilience, as people say, the resilience that others had long time ago. I don't know if that's true. Maybe now we are a bit more, we shed a light on things so much because of social media, but young people, we are lacking the resilience to keep fighting, to keep looking at life from a positive perspective. We are lacking the energy to fight on and be positive that things will get better, that you can seek help, that you can tell people your problems. But now we want to be seen that we are shining, we are good, we have money, we are living in Nairobi, we are living in posh places, we have a hold on things we are doing. We don't want to seem vulnerable, especially I don't know if it's the same for the boy child. Maybe Evans can tell us more later. But I know women show their vulnerabilities more than men. And from a perspective of mental health, I feel like it is mostly behind this femicide, because if you're really in love with someone, you're giving your all. That is according to the person. You're giving your all. You're really there for this person. You're giving them everything you have. You're trying to make them achieve their goals. You're supporting their causes. And then someone turns back and tells you and rejects you and tells you, I do not want you anymore. I want to walk away. I have found a better man, because I know people in relationships can really come out strong with words they use, because at that moment, maybe you're very angry, you feel very resentful, you feel so many things, and words might not be the wisest for that moment. But is this other person able to take it in and digest it in a positive way, that will not lead to beating, that will not lead to killing? Yeah. So for me, we really need to do more advocacy on mental health, and also maybe make counseling services very available and cheap, or maybe close to no cost. I don't know what the psychologists would say if they had me saying we should have counseling at no cost, but if we can make it affordable to the local man, to people, like I can just dial up and speak out and get help for maybe even at least 3 sessions? And would it make life better? And are we, even us as youths, open to the idea of mental health, of counseling? Or do we think it's in vitu ya wazungu, or it's for the bougie people, or I don't have the time to go and speak to someone, they won't even help me, and all that? How do we even view counseling? How do we even view that channel of communication, together with our partners, together with professionals, that is the counselors? How do we see it, and are we able to embrace it so that we do not reach to such extents? And then I would also go to the family role in terms of mental health. Are we really, for example, parents, those who are parents, are they able to sit down their children and build that mental resilience in them, to tell them that life will slap you in the hardest way, life will beat you up, life will step on you? No matter how much effort you're putting, it might not be as receptive to your efforts as it is, so that it can manage expectations, manage frustrations, manage loneliness, because I know sometimes loneliness can lead to so much evil and idle thinking and a lot of issues. Are we able to sit down even as our brothers and sisters keepers and tell them, this is what I'm facing and I do not want you to go through this, so can you always know that I'm here to share with you? And do they take it seriously? So we really just need to make mental health a normal thing, like seeking help a normal thing. It's not a sign of weakness, it's not a sign of umeshindwa, because I know people are afraid of looking like you can't handle your own things. Why are you telling us? You're afraid to be a laughing stock. You're afraid that you'll tell people and they won't even help. But I do believe there's a lot of burden that is removed by sharing. So we need to look at the motive that leads us to this sexual violence, to any form of violence, especially GBV, so that we can channel into it. That is in terms of building the resilience of individuals. And as at OTA, we say we are building, or we are empowering one individual at a time, so that they can go and spread it to all or to others. So if we can do that, if we can sit down individuals, if we can have conversations just at a deeper level. Not, I always tell people, change does not come from telling the whole world. You just start from next to you. Can people emulate you? Can your small brother, small sister feel like they can seek advice since you're older than them? I was telling my small sister, she's in high school and I'm now almost leaving my 20s. I was telling her, you can always talk to me. I've been here before and I can advise you. You do not have to take up everything I am doing, everything I'm saying, because we are different and you're building your own life story. However, I could give you pointers to how to handle life better. So let's really embrace cleaning our minds so that we are able to handle things and end GBV that comes from within us, because the mind is a powerful tool and it is a great step to moving forward from all forms of violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kendi. Indeed, those are very important things that we need to start thinking about, or start trying to implement as young people. Mental health is quite important. In my research, I found a Kenya demographic health survey, which looked into cases of femicide in Kenya. And the survey noted that although percentages of men and women aged between 15 and 49 years who have been victims of violence are roughly the same, with women at 45% and men at 44%, the perpetrators of violence are vastly different. So among every married woman, the most commonly reported perpetrators of physical violence is the current husband, or followed by the former husband, and the opposite is the same for the men. What I found interesting was that 1 out of 10 men who have experienced physical violence since the age of 15 mention either their current spouse as the perpetrator or their treaters. Additionally, according to Counting Dead Women Kenya, 108 women were victims of femicide between 1st January and 30th December of just last year, which shows that this is a lot of women actually victims of femicide, in as much as some of them are not even reported. These are just some of the cases that were reported. Yeah, so back to what I found interesting about the fact that 1 out of 10 men actually mention their current spouse or their teachers as the main perpetrators of violence among men. I'd like to bring in Evans to tell us something on that.
Thank you. I don't know whether I'm being put on the spotlight for being a man, but anyway, so I like the idea that we are also having men talk about gender-based violence and the fact that from the statistics, men I see the problem, I mean, a bigger part of the problem, yeah? So it's important for them to be also a bigger part of the solution. If you look at this ordeal involving what's this lady, Wahoo, and then there's also another story. It's actually a concluded case on the lady's called, I think you could find the case, it's called Trufena Ndonga Aswani versus Republic. So this is a case involving a wife who had to fight her way out of an abusive home. And in the process, she killed the husband. So the lady was taken to court and was charged with manslaughter. So back at home, of course, especially if you come in a home where there is retrogressive culture where people believe it's very normal for a man to beat up the wife, the lady is hated. The lady is not, they're saying she's a witch and all that because she killed the husband. And they forget to see the other side of the picture where it was a case of either you come out of this house alive or I come out of this house alive. So painting that scene versus what we have with what the unfortunate event that happened with Wahoo here, plus what the news was saying that the man came out with some stabbed wounds, So you wouldn't be very quick to judge and say that this was especially in this case, because I know there were other victims who came out afterwards to say they were also harassed, they were also abused by this man. So if you look at that instance in itself first, and then given that we were not privy to the events as they were happening live, it's very difficult to conclude who was on the receiving end of what and how did it end up that one came out alive and one did not. But that aside, I was just saying that from a very like from a male perspective, this is what I'd want for more people to understand, or for more men to understand, for us to be better solutions to ending GBV. So first is, I think as men or as everyone out here, we need to understand more how to communicate our desires, especially sexual, and what we want beforehand. Before we meet, we should be able to communicate such that when I take you out on a date, it doesn't have to end up in sexual favors. Let me just tell you from the beginning, hey, I want to take you out, or no, actually, I don't want to take you out. I just want us to have sex. It saves us the pain of me having to buy you drinks, of me having to buy you food. And then when you say no, I become aggressive. So point is, we need to learn to communicate what we want and not going round the corners, covering up and being nice, sweet words and all that. And then also, we need to also be taught how to deal with rejection more. So from the advocacy strategies that we use, this could be both from counselors and psychologists. I know, is it Emma who said that there should be free counseling? I wouldn't advocate for that, but I know perhaps advocacy programs on how to deal with rejection, especially on sexual matters, is very important, because once that happens, if you're told no, it doesn't force you to resort to violence against a certain individual. And this, applies to both sexes. Then the other thing, I think we also need to have a serious conversation on the aspect of sex and alcohol. So there needs to be so much advocacy around that, because if you walk into a typical Kenyan club, it's usually the men who buy drinks for the ladies. There's this phrase, kuna drinks, come na mayengs. Yeah. Like there's plenty of drinks, you come with the girls. And what that basically implies is we want to get these ladies drunk, and then after that, you're gonna exchange sexual favors. But who knows? I mean, these girls have just come to, also enjoy the free drinks and go back home. That is all they want. So it's important for us to just have a conversation around sex and alcohol and say the best way to have a sexual affair with a girl is when everyone is sober. Yeah, that way you know you actually consented to this or you did not consent. So I would say I think I will stop at that and maybe invite Harriet or I mean the opinions might be a bit controversial, but yeah, I'm gonna stand by them.
Thank you very much, Evans, for bringing out that phrase. It just reminded me of the number of cases that we usually hear, especially when we have, say, the safari rally in Naivasha, or these big events. Most of the time, young women are actually lured to go on road trips, and the girl will leave thinking that it's just having fun and everything, but at the end of the day, the man actually wants sexual favors in return, for his investment. And I do agree with you that we all need to learn to communicate our desires, as well as learn to accept rejection. Because in as much as most cases happen with men being the perpetrators, there are actually cases where women are the perpetrators, where you find, say, a woman actually likes a man, and she'll invite him to her house and she'll cook for him and everything, but at the end of the night, when the man says no, there's no sexual favors going to happen between me and you, the woman will start screaming and call the neighbors and start saying this guy wanted to to rape me or something like that, which again becomes a problem to the man who was actually innocent and actually tried to communicate his feelings from the word go. That being said, I'd like us to now move forward and discuss about the laws, or maybe the legal framework that actually is in place to fight in the yes.
If I can add a little on Evans, on
Yes, no
Evans's,
problem.
because the other day there was this story of the guy who bought the lady chips. Was it for 600 shillings? And instead of people really being trying to be neutral, I think they told ladies to not go and buy, not to go and get, you know, lured by chips and chicken, just because you want to know a man better. So if we can really just look also at the social media role in making these things worse, that is, the ladies were asking, no, we're not supposed to go out and know more about a guy. Are we not supposed to go out and just, what happened to dates? Have they been misconstrued and made to mean something different and all that? And does every other man assume that if a lady goes out with you, they're only there for the free meal? Or are they only there for the free drinks, free whatever you think is you're giving to them that should not end up being just for free, that they need to give you sex back? So um, I think that's an important conversation that needs to be expounded more in circles with people, so that we are able to break those small norms that people are putting up now. Yeah, thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
There's no problem. There's no problem. I'd like to invite Emma to talk about international laws, and then we'll move on from there. Emma?
Okay, thank you. I'll just also like to add something on that topic of dating. I don't know if the society wants us to come now to start coming up with parameters of how dating should be. Who are you supposed to date? Where are you supposed to go when your first date, second date? We are getting to know each other. Then what next? What are we supposed to do? And especially for us Africans, whereby we know for a lady, you are provided by a man. So if you ask me for a date, in my mind, I expect you to pay for that date. Let's put it like that. Anyway, yes, let's go delve into our legal frameworks. We are not going to just give an introduction, and then later on, other episodes will give more information on these legal frameworks that have been enacted internationally and locally and regionally. Most important is the UN Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which came into force in 1993. This framework mostly talks about issues affecting women. For example, Article 1 of the same convention talks about what is gender based violence. Article 2 of the declaration gives more insight on what constitutes gender based violence, which includes physical, sexual, psychological violence in the family, community, or perpetrated or condoned by the state. Also, it includes more other issues, including spousal battery, sexual abuse, including female children, dowry-related violence, rape, including marital rape, female genital mutilation, cutting, and other traditional practices harmful to women, and spousal violence, sexual violence related to exploitation, sexual harassment and intimidation at work, in school, and elsewhere, trafficking in women, and forced prostitution. Also, there is now other new forms of gender-based violence, including online violence against women. There is also reproductive abuse. Reproductive abuse mostly includes you are forced to be pregnant, or you are so if you become pregnant, you are forced to have abortion, or someone can beat you until you lose the child. Also, there is whereby women hide the semen and then later on insert it themselves to become pregnant, or women pretend to love you and everything so that they can get pregnant, and they call it for you, they trap you in that relationship. Other international conventions include the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which was enacted in 1979. It mostly gives states obligation and responsibility to end all forms of violence against women. It further requires state parties to prevent these acts or omissions through training, adoption, implementation, monitoring of legal provision, administrative regulations, codes of conduct to investigate, prosecute, and apply appropriate legal or disciplinary sanction, as well as provide reparation in all cases of gender-based violence against women. We also have guidelines on combating sexual violence and its consequences in Africa, namely guidelines by the African Union. These guidelines provides guidance for African Union member states in effectively implementing their commitments and obligations to combat sexual violence and its consequences. And then we have the Maputo Protocol, which actually last year we celebrated 20 years of its enforcement. Yes, the Maputo Protocol, also known as the Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa, and it was implemented in 2003. Article 4 provides prohibition of all forms of exploitation, cruelty, inhumane or degrading punishment and treatment of women, including sexual violence, and obligates to set up both protection and promotion mechanisms to ensure the prohibition of all forms of violence against women, including unwanted or forced sex, and ensure the prevention, punishment, and eradication of all forms of violence against women. There's also the Convention Against Torture of 1984. It helps states to come up with effective legislation, administration, judicial, or other measures to prevent acts of torture, which gender-based violence can be said to be torture against women, girls, and also men. and boys. Then you have the Rome Statute of 1998. Article 7 lists rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, enforced sterilization, or any other form of sexual violence of comparable gravity under crimes against humanity, which also forms part of gender-based violence, and mostly it falls under conflict related violence. Yes. I think those are the main conventions or declaration and the international community that helps us to look at gender-based violence and also come up with mechanisms for protection and promotion of rights of women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. I'll now go to Kendi to talk about the Kenyan laws briefly, and then we can have Evans comment on their sufficiency as we wrap up.
I think for me, I'll just add on the international conventions, then I can leave Evans to do the Kenyan laws, and also Emma, because as I said, wao ndo mawakili. So it would be best to hear from the wakilis. But I think I really love the Maputo Protocol and the CEDAW. It's been part of Africa looking out for each other very much and trying to make sure that everybody has ratified and everybody is part of that movement. Let me call it a movement of people who are coming together to form common laws on how to handle inequalities. And what I like about the Maputo Protocol is it has really gotten in the context of promoting women's rights, because sometimes we have gray areas. And of course, I'm not saying that it does not also have its own gray areas, but from how I look at it, it has really narrowed down to the actual life of a woman. You know, before you could form just laws and policies that are for women, but you're not considering what are the specific needs according to their specific level of maybe livelihoods or where they are in the social classes in terms of empowerment and having economic abilities. So for me, I really do like embracing those two, especially in our context of in the context of Africa, and especially for us in Kenya. And I do believe that it encompasses the various rights that I really do champion for, even as an individual and even as author. That is the right to work and economic empowerment. Women have the right to work in safe and equitable conditions. So we've seen a lot of issues on fair wages, equal access to opportunities, and until today, sadly, we do still have places where they're not open to women or open to men taking up, but mostly women taking up these positions or roles because they are women. And it is important that we do get that, so that we emphasize more on economic empowerment and equal treatment in the workplace. And then political participation. CEDAW does really underscore the importance of women's participation in public life, because decision making is also essential for gender equality. And of course, now the others, the right to be free from discrimination and violence, right to reproductive autonomy. And that's why I'm saying CEDAW and Maputo are really close to me, because they're really trying to go down and meet you at your point of need. So women have the right to decisions about their reproductive health and access to reproductive health care services, including, maybe many might not like, it might be a what can I say, a tricky area to talk about this safe and legal abortion, especially in our country, under certain circumstances. So it is recognized by these international rights instruments, and we need to put these things in place so that women are not subjected to things that they do not want. So I could go on and on the rights that they promote, like right to marry and found a family, right to access justice, right to education, right to health, right to life, liberty and security of a person, right to equality. So these laws are really important, and we do need to embrace them because they ultimately lead to us achieving what we're looking for, especially in our African context. So yeah, I'll leave it to you, Evans. Tafadhali, just tell us about the Kenyan laws, and I will chip in on what I think about them later. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So I believe Kenyan laws are many, and they all start from our Kenyan constitution, where a number of rights have been spelled out. And the beauty of our constitution is it doesn't pick that these are women's rights or these are men's rights. These are everybody's rights, or all Kenyans' rights. So there's, of course, the right to human dignity. There's the right to security of the person. There's the right to, be free from slavery or servitude and all those kinds of things. But the Constitution in itself is not enough to offer protection to gender-based violence victims by just spelling out the rights. There needs to be more laws to strengthen these rights and how they're spelled out. And so in the absence of a law specifically relating to gender-based violence, we have to resort to other laws that do not necessarily capture every angle of gender-based violence. And these include the Sexual Offences Act, which spells out issues such as sexual harassment, sexual assault. I actually saw there's also the aspect of induced indecent acts and all that. And then if we look at things like the penal code, which sets out things like grievous harm or body assault and all. So that is the framework that we are forced to work with when it comes to gender-based violence. But we forget issues such as intimate partner violence. How unique is it from normal people fighting? How unique is it from just me and Harriet today saying, you talk too much, I talk too much, let's clobber each other in a boxing ring, like normal violence out there. So I will say we have at least a framework that enables us to work, but it does not allow us to provide the justice that a gender-based violence victim will require, especially given that with lawyers, we like to be very specific about terms. We like to define almost everything. So if we cannot define what intimate partner violence is within the eyes of the law is blind and will round you off to assault. And that, well, in real sense, it is just not mere assault. It is a case of something else other than assault. So I would say perhaps this calls for an extra layer of conversation on the sufficiency of the laws that we have in protecting gender-based violence victims. I know for a fact we already have specialized gender-based violence courts running in Kenya. There are few, but at least we are making steps. And I'm hoping perhaps one of the things I'd celebrate the current Chief Justice for doing is actually recognizing that gender-based violence is a social problem, and she's trying to create court systems or justice systems that provide that. But the sad thing is that justice usually comes at the tail end of everything else. Like once you've been abused, once you've been violated, you need health support, you need psychological support, you need all this, and then justice will come last. So we are making courts. Of course, we don't want to live in a situation where there's no solution. But all I'm saying is the legal system will come last. I'll stop at that and request to say bye for now.
Thank you very much, Evans. I'd like to invite Emma and then Kendi to just do a quick rejoinder before we finish up.
Thank you. I'll also add more to the statutes in Kenya that provides for protection against violence. We have the Children's Act. It guarantees freedom, protection of children from any form of violence, including physical, psychological, and also protects children from female circumcision, early marriages, and other cultural rights. We have the Criminal Procedure Code, We have the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act, Police Service Standing Orders, and Employment Act. Yeah, as we start this journey together to analyze and also to educate, advocate, as well as inform the society about gender-based violence, we invite you all to come to this podcast, share your experiences, direct, indirect, and also your insights on this issue and the way forward for us as a society to end the vice and protect everyone from violence. I know it's a far-fetched dream of having a society that is free from violence. It's a dream that it's also possible, if we can only educate ourselves on how we can help ourselves as individuals not to violate others and respect their rights, respect when they say no, and respect when they say, I've not consented to this, and when a wife and husband can discuss their issues without violence. It's a dream that I believe that is achievable. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. I have really loved this session. I've loved these wonderful podcasts that we we've had, and I've loved everybody's insights. And I do agree there is much to be done, and we need to align our thoughts, align our actions, align our efforts. And my call to action, I will summarize it in a quote, and it's my favorite quote. I always say that I can't do the great things now, so I do the small things in a great way. So let's start everything we do in a small way, but of course in a grandiose way. And then we just build up, and we will find ourselves where we want to be. And let's follow our social media handles. For everybody who has gotten the opportunity to listen to us, follow our social media handles at One to All Initiative on Instagram, Twitter, and also on Facebook. I think Harriet can also share our social media blog post so that you can just keep tabs on us as we create awareness, as we advocate through social media and so on, and be part of the conversation. Let us know how we can also get your feedback on topics that we can have for these podcasts and so on, so that we can really get a perspective of everyone and discuss topics that are relevant to all of us as listeners and also as speakers. So thank you very much, and I have loved this session. Harriet, over to you.
Thank you very much to all the panelists.
We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, stories, or questions on our social media platforms or via email. Let's build a community dedicated to ending gender-based violence. In our upcoming episodes, we'll delve into modern dating. This episode, we call it Dating Made Familiar. Stay tuned for more impactful conversations. Thank you for joining us on this inaugural episode of Unsilenced. Together, let's break the silence and create a world free from gender-based violence. Until the next time, take care.